Radio Now 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.
Hello, I'm Emily Metheny, your host. This week, I spoke with Deputy Fire Chief Mike Pruitt from the Bargersville Fire Department. During our conversation, we talked about what we can be doing to keep ourselves safe and be proactive to prevent fires every day, and what extra we can be doing as the weather gets colder. We also talk about what first-time homebuyers should be thinking about when they purchase a new or older home. Fire Chief Pruitt starts by telling us about his department in Bargersville.
Yeah, so Bargersville Fire Department, we're located about 15 miles south of Indianapolis. We serve 71 square miles, which is a combination of urban and rural community. We have 40 career firefighters, and we have about another 30 part-time firefighters. We have 2 fire stations, and we provide fire and EMS and specialized rescue services.
Mm-hmm. And you guys are also very involved in the community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We are. We're very involved. We have 3 different school corporations that we serve. Mooresville, a section of Mooresville schools, a section of Franklin Community Schools, and Center Grove schools. So we do public education within those schools to those students. And then we're very involved in going out and, supporting the community within different events here in Bargersville or the surrounding area. So we take advantage of every opportunity we can to go out into the community and interact, answer questions that the people who live in our community have about our fire department, or if they have questions on, especially when it comes to fire safety, or looking for recommendations, maybe they need smoke alarms installed in their homes. So we kind of do whatever we can for our community, and sometimes they are things that are absolutely not even related to the fire service. So we get calls for, just the other day, we got a call for a cat that was stuck behind a refrigerator, and the elderly lady could not get the cat from behind the refrigerator. So we went out and took care of the cat. We get interesting calls like that just to help the community when we can. And so, we enjoy that. To get into this business, you have to be a person that enjoys interacting with the public.
Mm-hmm. When would be a time that I should call the fire department if I'm not having a fire emergency?
So a lot of times people just don't know what to do. They get in a tough situation. And there are non-emergency numbers throughout communities on how you get a hold of someone to come help you. Or many times these days, if you have access to the internet, you can a lot of times find the local fire department's number and call them directly instead of going through 911. But there are alternative numbers out there that communities have that you can call for non-emergency situations to get assistance. And you just kind of check and see what those numbers are, whether it's a 311 number, a 411 number, so that you can get proper help. And usually fire departments are very good about finding a resource to get you help when you need it if we cannot provide it ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And so some of the resources, going kind of into the fall, we'll start generally. So what are some general fire safety measures people should be following throughout the normal year? Well,
one of the big things is always making sure you have working smoke alarms in your home. Mm-hmm. When we look across the country, or even here in the state of Indiana, when we experience a fatal fire in our communities, typically we can trace that back to that home not having a working smoke alarm. Mm-hmm. That is one of the best investments that you can make when it comes to keeping your family safe, is making sure that alarm is installed properly and making sure that it's working around the clock, 365 days a year. And then, on top of that, making sure that we have, we've talked to our family about fire safety as far as, what do we do if we have a fire in the home? Where do we meet? Where do we go? If we have kids that maybe are old enough to stay home, but maybe, aren't familiar with what to do in the middle of a crisis, it's very important that we practice, what we're going to do in the home. So in the event something happens, they know who to call, they know where to go, they know how to react to the emergency situation. And that could be a fire, that could be a medical emergency. So either one. and what they need to do. And, the surprising thing is most kids are very well educated in the procedures because we spend so much time educating them in the schools. And so when an emergency does happen, many times the kids know more about what they need to do than the parents do.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes we're looking for the kids to educate their parents because they tend to rat their parents out when we go to teach them in the schools of whether they have working smoke alarms or whether mom or dad took the battery out of the smoke alarm. So, working as a family unit to make sure that everybody is prepared, have good communication, if they have to call somebody, find somebody for help, that they know exactly what to do. Those are our biggest things. And as we move towards these winter months, a lot of people, get the working smoke alarm, but as we start to seal up our homes, carbon monoxide alarms are very important to have in the home also because we make our homes tight. And if we have gas-fed appliances within the home, we run the risk of having a poisonous gas that we cannot taste nor smell, that if we do not have a seal alarm in the home, we could run the risk of never knowing there's an issue and we could have tragic consequences.
Mm-hmm. And how often should we be changing the batteries in our alarms, both the smoke detector and the carbon monoxide detector? And how often should we be testing these?
So I would test them every month, okay? Or if you're just walking by it, take a broomstick, stick it up there, push on the button, make sure it's working. The nice thing about today's new smoke alarms that are coming out is they have a 10-year battery in them. So literally you don't have to take the battery and change it. Now, a lot of people still maybe have the alarms that have the batteries in them, and we make sure that, hey, let's change those batteries out. I would say every 6 months. Some people might say, change them out on your birthday every year, but I say every 6 months for something that valuable to have in your home, that's that important. I'm going to make sure I got fresh batteries in that, ready to go and ready to work all the time. And that goes the same for the carbon monoxide alarms also. Some of those have their plug-in type with a battery backup. So make sure you're changing those. So, we always want to make sure that they're going to work if we ever have a power failure or anything like that. And then most of these alarms are good for like a 10-year period. So you'll see a manufacturer's date on the smoke alarm, and you should be changing it out, the complete unit, 10 years from that date that it was manufactured. So it's usually can be found on the back of the smoke alarm.
Excellent. And once we start hitting that 10-year mark and I want to switch over and have the newer smoke alarms, I can give you guys a call and you can help me install these properly in my house, right?
That's correct. I would say that majority of the fire departments that I'm familiar with will, if you do not know how to install the smoke alarm properly or you have questions, that majority of all the fire departments out there will come out and make sure that you have it installed properly. And if you can't afford a smoke alarm, and there are people out there that can't, they're on tight budgets, you can go to your local fire department and get at least one smoke alarm for your home, which can be a game changer. We always recommend one on every floor of the home or one on every sleeping space. It's what you can afford, but we know we want one in the house that's functional. So yes, rely on your fire departments. They're very well educated in installing these things. If you cannot quite figure it out, you might be a person that's not physically capable of doing that. So, reach out, and I think that you'll get a good response from your fire department.
Excellent. And then for the carbon monoxide detectors, do we need one for the whole house? Should it be on each level? How does that work?
I would put one on each level of the home, and make sure we don't put them in areas where there's going to be a huge concentration. I like to keep them where there's living spaces. Sometimes if we install these in the room where maybe we have a water heater or other gas appliances, we're going to get alerts on these things often, and they become more of a nuisance than they need to be. And so then we end up unplugging them, we take the batteries out of them. So the important places, we want to move them out in areas such as around bedrooms, hallways, areas where, when we go to bed at night and, these poisonous gases are in our home, we don't wake up because we don't know we have them in there. So putting them and spreading them out throughout your home, but trying to keep them out of spaces where there's a high concentration to where there's a lot of activity going on a lot with the gas. where those gas appliances are being used.
And that's like your oven, if it's a gas oven, your washer dryer, your water heater. Those are the devices that create this carbon monoxide, correct?
Yes. So, it's sometimes, if we don't clean some of those appliances well, the flame isn't burning clean, you're going to get that concentration of carbon monoxide in the home. And so, even with your smoke alarms, we don't want to install those in the kitchens either, because every time somebody burns a little food, it goes off. And yes, it's great that it works, but again, it turns around and becomes a nuisance. We unhook it for whatever reason, we forget to put it back up, and then we actually have a fire in the home. So we try to keep those out of those areas where that cooking is going on, and putting them somewhere closer to where we're going to be hanging out. Living room, bedroom, hallways, outside the bedrooms, areas like that.
Mm-hmm. And what are some other fire safety guidelines we should be following, especially during the winter months when we have candles and fireplaces lit?
So we'll start with fireplaces. So if you have a fireplace in your home, make sure that you get it inspected and cleaned by a professional chimney sweep before you go to use that. Because what happens is people burn in their fireplaces over years, and that heat, that cooling and that heating in that fireplace can cause some damage to the home, or damage to that flue over time if we don't take good care of it. And we might choose to think it's okay to burn boxes, paper, and a lot of that material has glue in it. So when you burn it in there, that glue sticks, it creates creosote, which can cause a flue fire, which then can extend into a home and cause a full-blown residence fire. So make sure that you call a certified chimney sweep. You can get online, find out where they're at, have them come out, clean it, inspect it before you use it. Using properly dried wood is also very important, because if you go down and you try to cut down a tree and you don't let it dry really well, then you're going to have that buildup of creosote issues again in your flue and going to cause you problems. So then we talk about other alternative heating sources such as space heaters. And this is where I've seen the problem over the years that I've been in the fire service is people like to use space heaters. And what happens is they leave them unattended, or they put them too close to something that's combustible. So maybe they put them too close to the bed, too close to a chair, a blanket, or maybe newspaper, something like that. And over time, it degrades that material and it'll actually start a fire. So we always use that rule of thumb that we keep all space heaters 3 foot away from anything that's combustible. The other thing we do is we always shut them off when we go to bed at night. And I know everybody's like, well, it's going to get cold. Well, add some blankets and snuggle up a little closer and shut the space heater off. Shut it off when you leave home so it's not on. Make sure that, we have pets and we have children that run around. So let's be careful and not have them in an area that's a high traffic area where it can get knocked over, even though most of your new style space heaters have safety features. So if they fall over, they get too hot, they shut off. But not necessarily the case with all of them. And the other thing is, don't use an extension cord with space heaters, because they pull so much energy that the extension cord will break down, become hot, and also start a fire. So those are some rules of thumbs when it comes to that. Furnaces, get them cleaned before winter. We know what the temperatures have been dropping here across the state, and we're moving into winter. We're going to start getting calls for smell of smoke in the home or business, and typically, a lot of times it's because this furnace is firing off, it's not clean, hasn't been inspected, and we start to get the smell of smoke in our home and people call. So we do see that at this time of year. So those are some of the things when we're trying to stay warm, things that we need to be doing now before we get into those deep, cold months of, late December and January, where we want all this to work. We want to stay warm. We want to keep the family comfortable and safe.
Mm-hmm. And how often should someone have their furnace professionally looked at? Should it be every year like their chimney?
I would have it looked at every year before the season starts. And when I say the season starts, we get into fall, that's a good indicator. Hey, we probably ought to get the furnace serviced to make sure everything is good on it. Make sure our pilot light is operating correctly. If we have a gas furnace, if we have an electric furnace, make sure all your wiring is good. I don't know how many times we've taken the face off of a a furnace or the outside panel off of a furnace, and what once was, you could tell it was just full of dust. And so at some point, all that dust lit off and caused a fire in the furnace. So make sure you get them clean. Keep them swept out. Take your sweeper, go in there and sweep out all the dust, and make sure you change your filters so it will work efficiently.
When it comes to using your dryer, because it does pull all that lint off, do people need to how often do they need to clean out their lint trap that goes outside?
You should clean, especially so two things that they need to inspect. One is we have the little slide-in filter that we have in our dryers, so we always make sure that's clean. Then that vent pipe needs to be cleaned, and we need to inspect that every few months just to make sure that you don't have any backup of that lint, because we do get calls throughout the year for dryer fires, and typically it's because that lint has backed up in that pipe going to the outside of the home. And that's especially if you have a pipe that has to maybe travel a little bit further distance for its exhaust. So another thing that, when you're looking at that furnace and cleaning that furnace, clean your dryer also. Just be a good practice to knock it out all at once.
Excellent. And for young homeowners, when they're going and they're buying their first home, these are some of the things they just really need to watch out for, correct?
Yes. And the hope that when somebody does a home inspection for you, that they're looking at some of those things. But one of the cool things you can get online these days in a home safety checklist, especially if you're buying a new home, and you can go down and it's going to ask you, check, make sure that you have the properly working smoke alarms in the house. Do I have one on every level? Do I have one in the attic? That's something in our community where we're getting a lot of new homes that are built. A lot of people don't think about putting a smoke alarm in their attic, and then we get a thunderstorm that comes through with lightning. They take a lightning strike to their home, and the fire may smolder in their attic space for a long time, start burning, and no one notices that because there's not a smoke alarm in that area. So making sure you got smoke alarms in the basement, main level, second floor, attic, those are important things to make sure that you have in place. So that's probably one of the most important things that you need in place in your home when you're looking at buying a home.
And where can people find these checklists?
If you Google fire safety checklist, everything from the NFPA, the U.S. Fire Administration, when you go to their site, there are safety tips on there. And literally every season, as I talk about different safety issues, I get on the internet and I see what the latest trending safety messages are. And there are so many organizations, so many companies and government organizations out there that put information out on how to keep you safe, that you literally will have everything you need in the toolbox to make sure your home is safe for you and your family.
And if someone wants to learn more about fire safety, either from your department or online, what's the best place to either contact you or visit?
You can, in our community, a lot of times people contact us to come out and do fire safety presentations, and that's pretty much most fire departments will do that if you call them and pre-schedule an event coming out to come out and talk to them about home fire safety. But you can go to the National Fire Protection Association's website, the NFPA website, and they have all kinds of educational material on there for whether you just wanted to do training with your family in the home, or say you're a teacher, or maybe you work in a business and you want to do some fire safety training. There's tons of information on there for you to utilize to do your educational programs to help people learn a little bit more about fire safety.
And do you get a lot of businesses working with you to help educate their employees to stay safe while at work?
So usually where businesses will reach out to us if they need training with fire extinguisher training, per se. How to use fire extinguishers, because as simple as it may seem, you have to make sure you use a fire extinguisher properly to put out a fire, and you have to make sure you use the right fire extinguisher to put out a fire. And then we also offer services like CPR training for a lot of businesses and our local schools. So we can kind of groom it to whatever you need. And then there are a lot of private companies out there that also do this also on the side. So it's just depending on what you have available to you. what kind of money you had to spend on getting your business educated. So there's a lot of opportunities out there to make sure that your people know what to do in case of emergency.
Excellent. And before we wrap up, Deputy Fire Chief Pruitt, is there anything else you'd like to add?
We know that the holidays are coming up soon, and it's people will start getting ready. We're coming up past through Halloween. We start getting into cooking safety issues. We get into Christmas tree, making sure we're keeping Christmas trees watered when we get into towards the Christmas season. We start using candles, which I like a good smelling candle as much as anybody, but unattended they can have tragic consequences. So if you can find alternative types of lighting, if you can use an artificial tree instead of a real tree, cooking safety is a whole topic on itself on how to be safe in the kitchen, or if you're deep frying a turkey, or just there's so many things that are going to be coming up at the holidays, and as busy as everybody is, they all lose their mind and they forget things and they get in a hurry, and that's when we get ourselves in trouble. So we just want everybody to slow down, have a safe winter, have safe holidays coming up, and so we can enjoy 2022. So we're trying to pull out of this COVID thing. We're making some progress, and so we just want everybody to be able to get back to that life we once knew, where things are a little bit simpler than what they are today.
Thank you for joining me this week, and please join me again next week. If you want to reach out or have topics you'd like to hear more about or would like me to cover, email me at emetheny, that's EMETHENY, at radio-one.com. Or you can hit me up on Twitter at EmilyDoesVideo. To hear previous editions of Indy's Connection, visit RadioNOWIndy.com and search Indy's Connection at the top. Until next time, have a great week.
Radio Now 100.9's Indy Connection with Emily Metheny.